And frankly, I hope she shows up, because I want to hear what she has to say too.
She's more important than both of us.
Yes.
What are your little handout cards?
These? Oh, these. Regional Anthropomorphic Writers Retreat. These are last year's. But anyway, website information is still good. RAR is actually a very good opportunity for people to come together. It's classes are run by Kyle Gold and Ryan Campbell. It's held at a private residence in at Lake Tahoe out in California. So it's a really intensive course. I've not attended myself. I will be applying again this year. I would encourage everybody to apply because everyone I've ever talked to that have gone through it got a lot out of it.
Apparently, you can only go like once.
You can only go once. That is correct.
If you have questions about the event directly, I went this year, so.
Skunk Bomb went 2 years ago, and TJ
Was
was
probably going to be here last year as well, so.
yeah. Well,
Well, you tweeted at her 5 minutes ago, so she may just be indisposed. Should we soft open it?
yeah, I think so.
All right. I'm forced into the leadership position. Really
Yeah.
great. After yesterday's performance, I'm not sure. I had sleep. I'm better now.
True.
All right. Feasting. Always feasting. She better. She's bringing pocky, I hope.
What flavor?
Chocolate?
Yeah, it was chocolate.
Yeah. I'm White Yodi. I've been writing in the fandom since about 2000, and I have about 33 published stories in about 28, 29 books, including Heat, Fang, Roar, and many others if you want to stop by the Rabbit Valley table, Sulfur Wolf table, or the Fur Planet table. There's a bunch of stuff there, and there's a lot more stuff than you could even imagine. It's really blown up in the past few years.
I'm Long Moogle. I've been writing since about 2004, first published last year in Fragments of Life's Art. My story is a slice of life story in that one about a transgender character coming out to her father before she moves on to college. So that's about the extent of my experience. On the published side of things, if you're not counting, I am in Heat this year, had a poem published in Heat, and recently had a story published in a free e-magazine called Typewriter Emergencies.
So when we talk about slice of life, we're kind of pulling it back from the fantastical, the mythological. Basically, I like to refer to it as sticking my head up into a normal everyday and then seeing what's interesting and trying to pull from that. I have a story in Heat that's coming out at this con. It's called Blue Collar Blues, and it's basically a couple of Detroit auto workers in 1962, I believe, are having a guy's night out, and it turns into a bit more. And it's a lot more complex than that, but that's what makes it slice of life, is because your characters need flaws, and people are wonderfully flawed. So there's just so much fodder out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually saw one definition online of slice of life that said the story does not need a defined plot, conflict, beginning or end. I wholeheartedly disagree with that. I've seen some writing in that style. If you want to sell it, I would recommend having some type of plot. So, but yes, it's basically following the everyday events of your character. And to make it interesting, it's important that they have some kind of conflict, some type of flaw, like White said. And you just explore that. You explore how that goes. And the really good thing about slice of life is you can touch a lot of people with it, because the characters are so relatable.
Because they're normal.
Yeah, because they're normal, exactly. I know!
The order and the tricks. Probably, if anybody knows about flaws, it's furries, because we are so wonderfully flawed in so many different ways. And even just going through it, I'm kind of coming from a place of, I write a lot of adult stuff, so I'm trying to figure out how to, there she is, feasting!
That's where I was.
Ha. There we go.
That's why they're all laughing at that joke. Do they know it? Oh no.
Some of us do. We can relearn it.
Okay.
The panel is saved. She's all right.
No, 2/3 of it was already here.
You're more important.
Hello. Very good to meet you.
Good to see you again.
You too.
I brought you Pocky.
We're saved.
More feasting. Okay. You guys were being entertaining without me, right? No.
Here, we'll put them in the middle.
That way.
Yeah, we just described our opinions of what slice of life is and contains and how it's so great because all people are so normal and flawed and we can work with that.
Awesome. Cool. Now what?
It's not the
Introduction.
Yeah, introduce yourself.
What?
Oh, we've already done that.
Oh no. I'm Maggie. I write books. That's enough, right?
How many awards have you won?
I don't win awards. I sell lots of books. That's what I do. Yeah, I sell books. I write books that sell.
And I don't publish stories, I just write. Somebody
Okay.
else publishes them.
That's awesome.
No, it's not tough. I'm on.
Well, not me, but yeah, I get it.
You do that.
Okay. So what are we doing?
So
How are we doing?
What do you think is what describes slice of life?
Stories about everyday life and the little dramas of everyday life.
Well, yeah, and the little dramas that come and go and are resolved or not. Actually, the ones that remain unresolved are really good stories. They just they don't mean anything to us if they're tiny. If they're normal, then they're normal. But you know, then we have the dramatic ones. But we can dramatize even the normal ones, like everybody you pass outside. You have no idea what's going on in their head. Someone told me once, "Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle."
Plato? I think it is.
It wasn't attributed, so I don't know.
I think it's one of the Greek philosophers.
It was on a sign in Target, and you know,
I was gonna say, did you find it on a bumper sticker?
it could have been on a buffer sticker. It probably is somewhere.
But no, jumping off of what White said, something I really enjoy writing are stories with open endings, because I find that a tragic ending or an open ending is an ending that sticks with me. If everything's all wrapped up, nice and happy, I'll forget the ending really quickly. So when I write a slice of life story, I do like to have an open ending. Like everything's not quite wrapped up, but you might have things progressing. It's like, okay, this character is getting better, things are getting better, or, oh, this could take a really bad turn. I love leaving the endings open, and slice of life is a great genre for doing that.
Kind of like a cliffhanger?
No.
Yeah, not necessarily a cliffhanger.
It's not. It's a package, but it's got a couple of rips and folds. It's just not all pretty tied up with a bow. I do that a lot too. I like some of my best stories. Were resolved, but not in the best way, but they were still great stories because they didn't have all that happy stuff.
I do happy all the time.
Kind of like how the Mice of Men ended. How you don't know if you just end up, like, one of the main characters end up leaving, or you just end up staying on the farm, you don't know what happens.
Yeah.
Right.
That would be good. But I do.
So
I
Well,
do happy. Happy is good.
Yeah.
Happy is good too.
Yeah, he's happy.
Oh, absolutely. Happy family. Good.
Don't do that face. No, that's not a happy face. That's a weird face.
Well, I mean, I wrote I'm going to try and work in vague terms because of my wheelhouse, but
What? What's your your wheelhouse?
adult stuff. So
Right,
it's
yeah.
not
Oh.
10 yet, so I have to.
Yeah, that's
hold that.
different. Okay, right.
The point of this particular story wasn't, it was a resolution, but it was like a couple of poor kids living under a bridge and stuff, and their resolution was they were able to get, money to buy food and things that they needed to, but the way that they got that money was something that was anything but, the right thing or a happy thing, but, and the characters changed throughout the story, and the story had an ending, it just wasn't, it got them through another day.
Okay, great example of slice of life. Friends.
Oh
Friends,
my
the
God,
TV
yes.
series, was great slice of life.
Well, I don't know if I'd call it great, but that
It
is
was
an example.
very entertaining.
It was more realistic than you think.
It was very entertaining. It was a good-hearted, fun show.
It's a personal opinion.
So that's what I would consider slice of life, stuff like that. My boyfriend dumped me, I hate my job, I need to find a new one, where do I live? burned myself in the kitchen, and now I'm hopping around on one foot looking dumb, and then somebody saw me and I felt embarrassed about it, that kind of stuff.
There was a story Kyle Gold wrote a while back, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was called 12 Steps or something like that. It was a character who suffered from depression, and I totally relate to that. And so he wrote where characters getting ready for a date or something like that, and he leaves himself little notes about these things to fight the depression, like, God, I forgot what they were, but they were, it's like
I
they
think
have.
it was how to get through the day.
Yes, okay, yeah. So you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Okay, and that's that person's slice of life. That's actually my slice of life. I'm fighting a hard battle every day, but it just doesn't look like that. But it's really, there's a lot of stuff to write about, especially if you write what you know in that particular way.
Yes, back there?
I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically a slice of life is just someone's everyday life, like they accidentally get burned by a pan and they feel pain, or like they're going on a date and they blush, like basically that slice of life type of stuff.
It can be, yeah.
Game of Thrones is not slice of life. It is the slice of their lives, right? But it's high fantasy,
Right.
mostly, yeah.
And there is some genre crossover. Like all right, sticking with the theme of TV shows, you could almost call Cops a slice of life because it's the slice of life of those police officers. It's just full of action because, they're recording the police chases.
Very
Which is
depressing.
multiple slices of life all at once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a glimpse in someone's life, what they're doing at that particular time, and when it's written in an entertaining way, it's really fun to write and it's fun to read.
So you could have like the main category of a story, and then there's like a sub one for like a similar theme. Say like slice of life and cartoons or something, like for a subcategory.
I don't know if cartoons works as a subcategory for writing.
Like everyday life or raining anvils or something.
Okay, well, that would be like more
Having
like
written something like that.
fantasy slice of life. maybe.
Yes,
Okay.
it does touch on both of them. Slice of life is I guess it's more nebulous than I previously thought. It does tend to stick out into a lot of other things, but I think for our purposes, it's the most.
The drama is not like,
It's not as emphasized.
the conflict is not as shattering or extreme or anything.
It's not. I find that it's not so much event driven as it is character driven.
There we go. Yeah. It's how people react to these things,
Right.
Instead of the things that they react to.
Except, you can have how characters react to, a bombing or something, and that would not be like
Mhm.
minor drama or anything. I don't know, it's
I
just.
would still call it slice of life.
Mm.
It's an unfortunate slice of life,
I
but
think-
it is a slice of life. I mean, not to be incredibly dark, 9/11 happened. People lived through that, so telling a story perspective from that point of view could be
Well,
That might be
slice of life.
historical versus slice of life.
Well, like slice of life would be a day in the life of a character who goes through that, and action might be a day in the life of a person who actually runs around and tries to defuse it and is involved with espionage and all that. So it's the emphasis, I guess, on.
I want to say the mundane, but it's not mundane to.
Yeah.
It's not to me.
It's focused, like I said, more on the character than the event. The events can happen. The events can be the conflict, but it is more focused on the character. Yes, I didn't see who had a hand up first.
There's only one hand, I see.
All
There's
right.
two.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
Go.
I guess
Go.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Slice of life is typically like very relatable. I'm guessing.
yes.
That's what differentiates it between like drama or it can still go out into those, but the relatability is really what defines it, I guess.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
for sure. Yes, sir.
It almost sounds like you're saying that it's slice of life if it's not any other genre.
No.
No, yeah, not necessarily. Because you could do something that was completely off the wall that no real person could actually do, and then it wouldn't fall into the slice of life category at all. Like superhero stories couldn't really be slice of life stories because normal people can't do what superheroes do.
So if it's everyday life.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Red Dwarf is kind of like Friends, and that's sci-fi.
Yeah,
What
well, you
about
can,
contemporary everyday life? Because there's a point where I'm thinking of things where you mentioned 9/11. That's almost becoming historical, actually, if it's not already.
but I think you can displace it. It can be science fiction slice of life. It can be fantasy slice of life. It can be, and at some point it's new adult romance slice of life. So it's kind of like, I don't know. It's not that
Themes
it's
within a genre.
It's not just that. It's not that it's nebulous. It's just that the conflict isn't world shattering or extremely highly dramatic. I don't know.
Would, like, if that's the case, then what would the, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, finish. and
What
then-
would, the key things for slice of life? Because it sounds like one of the key things is having, like, a relatable drama happening.
Want to go ahead?
No, go for it.
Okay. What I would say, well, first of all, it doesn't have to be drama. It's just, like I said, the character focus. You're focusing on the character, and they're living their life. And there can be drama in that, because it's like every day we deal with drama every day. We experience that. Action, you step out on the crosswalk when the light turns green and car runs the red light, you have to jump back, There you got your action. And so it's, in that sense, it is kind of nebulous. But it's all focused on that character, and that's what makes it relatable, because the characters are real and, like White said, flawed. They're everyday people.
It's mostly in the relatable things, like the My Story in Heat. There's just two random guys. They're in Detroit. They work on Pontiacs. They're just regular Joes. If you walked by them on the street or went out for a beer or something like that, you wouldn't even know their secret history. And that's, sometimes I'm walking down the street and I'm looking at people and I'm like, I have no idea all the cool things that these things in everybody else's life. It's fascinating. It's like a peek. Actually, there you go. It's slice of life, but it's somebody else's when you're reading it, so it's a peek into someone else's normal.
Yeah, let's
Okay.
pull it back to the curtain.
Yeah.
All right, so since we could probably spend an hour and a half circling around definitions,
We have Wiki.
we have Wikipedia. Okay, Wikipedia says,
Very reliable source.
it's better than nothing. Okay, in theatrical parlance, a very realistic depiction of everyday experiences in art and entertainment, while in literary parlance it refers to a narrative technique in which a seemingly arbitrary sequence of events in a character's life is presented often lacking plot development, conflict, and exposition, and often having an open ending. So there you go. That's why things like Friends usually have really bad endings, because they don't know how to end it.
Right.
It doesn't end. Life doesn't end, right? So there you go.
Okay, we had hands up.
Go for it.
Well, my way of viewing it is, it's like taking a page or two out of a well-annotated diary, bringing it up into the light, and editing it so that it is more presentable. It's not something that's going to be a blip on a person's life or anything like that. If you were to ask them about it another day.
Yeah, in a sense, I could see that. I would say it's very similar to like a memoir would be. Well, a memoir is basically an essay that you've converted to prose form. So you're saying that it could be like a diary converted to prose form. So that's absolutely true. That could work.
Yes,
Hi,
way back.
way back. I'm wondering, when it comes to the technique of actually writing it, whether you think a first-person approach to writing the story or a third-person approach is more effective in telling the story.
It
Writing it
depends.
as
I think that-
or
I think it
writing
depends on
like,
the
I went to the store today, or she went to the store today.
Right.
I guess that depends on what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, if what you're trying to do is to give a intimate portrait of the inside of somebody's head that has no access to anybody else's thoughts or actions, then you want first person. If you want something that can take advantage of knowing what's going on elsewhere in other people's heads, then you want third, I would think, right?
Exactly, yeah. Take, for example, interaction in a coffee shop. If you're going from third person, it's like a person walks up to the counter, orders, and you may have, eyes and looks and glances and things like that. But if, if it was first person, the first thing I thought was, if I order 3 equals, are they going to be mad at me? How many horrible people have they had to serve today? Some people have everyday anxiety about that. Some people are just having a bad day and don't really just want their coffee and want to go. And so you get all of those mental lines of thought that expose in a different way than omniscient or narration would.
Right. And what I would say, in direct relation to the question about what lends itself better to the genre, it's whatever you write to your strengths, whatever you're best at. I write third person limited because that's what I do. First person is the rare exercises where I'm trying something new. So that's me personally. That's what works for me. If first person works better for you, then that's what you should do.
I've written first, second, and third persons.
Second person was actually a fun challenge. That was.
Second person is a really fun challenge.
Second?
You.
You walk to the door, you look inside.
Choose your own adventure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love every point of view has its own strengths. My weakness is third person, like really big omniscient, where you have multiple people in a room and a larger cast of characters, and you want to try to put them all together and
Right.
guide it without bogging people down in a bunch of different people's inner thoughts.
Well, a true third person omniscient is very hard to do. Question back there in the adorable purple and pink fursuit.
Oh, about the question earlier?
Yeah.
Oh, that was about the third person limited. Asked me if that was okay, but you kind of answered.
Oh,
that
yeah.
on your own.
Okay.
But thank you. for
You're very
the
welcome.
comment.
More questions. More lack of questions. Awesome.
Feasting.
Go.
Yeah, this is a little similar to what we've already covered, but is it possible to write a slice of life story about ordinary people who just happen to live in a science fiction or fantasy or superhero universe?
I did it. I did do it. It is about a space elf and a centaur. It is their slice of life. And the funny thing is, the reason why it works as a slice of life is because they're completely alien. So everyone's like, what would it be like to be them? I want to live their life for a few weeks and see what it's like to be them and live in their world and just go to college and have classes and have inappropriate crushes and stuff like that. I want to know what that's like, And
Centaur college would be interesting.
yeah, and it works. So yes, it can be done, and it's
But we don't
and
have uniforms.
also really good. James White. James White did the Sector General series.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and even though that's like medical science fiction, it's really like slice of life of a doctor in a floating starbase hospital treating multiple aliens, and it's like little case studies of how he figures out why this heavy gravity worlder is having problems and stuff. And it's slice of life from a future doctor, with aliens, and that was really cool. And I think he won several awards back in the 70s, so it's totally possible.
Yeah, if I could start to direct a question to Yodi, or Yod, however it's pronounced, I'm sorry. Okay, well, first, I feel for your struggles, and I hope your life gets better. And okay, second, your story you've mentioned about the Detroit auto workers. I noticed you haven't specified whether they're human or furry, and if they are furry, what impact does it make on the story?
That's a good question. It is furry because he's a furry magazine, and so we have I don't have my heat with me, so you have a tiger and a Shiba Inu, and you don't really. There's the furry that really impacts, like everything has to do with it, and there's a lot of accentuated animal things, but this one is more humans with furry masks, basically. Like, it's just nothing's changed about Detroit or the era or anything like that. It's just they happen to be in there, but I do make use of, smells, scents, and the ears and tails and things. And there is a little bit of good nature, because this is 1962, good-natured racism on the part of the Shiba, or directed toward the Shiba, because they're old buds and they clap on the back, et cetera, et cetera. So it comes in handy there. And I do make another joke about the tiger somewhere in the story, but beyond that, it's just two dudes just doing their thing, and the way that ends up. And I looked up another story that I couldn't remember the name. It's called, it's Stephen King. It's called This Bus is Another World. That Bus is Another World. And basically it was inspired by him. He was on a bus one day, and he passed another bus, and was it a lady he was looking at? Or it was something else? And they met, their gaze met while the buses were passing, and then boom, and you have two people.
Wait, boom what? Did she explode?
Great story. And then there was feasting. What?
The crows. No, I mean boom like they fall in love, they die, something gets in an accident.
Boom, he had the idea for a story.
Okay.
But the point of the bus is passing.
That's
and
not very exciting. Sorry, continue. Continue.
I'm not done.
Okay, sorry.
But it's these things occur to me too. And they met, their eyes met, and then he started thinking, what is her life like? What did she do? What is she going to do? And is she wondering the same thing about me? And it's just little tiny things like that that all add up to part of the slice of life thing, at least for me.
Okay. Talk.
I'm Mog. I'm a Moogle. I do Moogle things.
Okay. I guess we want more questions.
That's your Twitter bio. That's everything. Introduction.
More questions? No questions.
Here we go.
Okay, for one and then two. Okay.
So, the slice of life is sort of this collection of mundane events that become dramatized. But how do you keep it from sort of dragging? Like, I just read that, and that's it's like pretty fast paced for slice of life. My life is not very interesting. Like, today I woke up, I rolled up the stairs, and I sat down in front of my computer, and I did computer-y things for 8 hours. Like, how do you decide which events to sort of highlight and emphasize and really get into their thoughts about, and make it not this tedious humdrum of, and then he poked at the computer for 8 hours?
Okay. This is actually a lot simpler than you think. I'm being serious. So, you get up, get out of bed, you're starting your life, you get your coffee or your tea, and you go to your computer, you're sitting, you're doing your computer thing for 8 hours, and then the phone rings. So, you answer the phone, it's the doctor. He's got your lab results back. See, I mean, that's all you have to do. That's why I don't necessarily agree with the lack of conflict in slice of life, because to me, a story has to have conflict to be a good story.
Okay. Excellent slice of life. Anne of Green Gables.
Oh, yes.
So, each and that's slice of life, it doesn't even have an overarching, story plot through the whole book. Each little chapter is just like an anecdotal, this silly thing happened, or this strange thing happened, or, I wrote this story for a contest, and they put notifications about cornflakes in them because it was for an advertisement or something like that. I made a cake and I put real rum in it, and I was only 13. They're the kind of stories you tell people when you get together with them and talk about, oh, this thing happened to me, you'll never believe it. That's the stuff that you want, right? And it's still small and relatable unless you're in espionage or stuff like that. So.
I didn't realize until a few years ago when I started some dialectical behavioral therapy is a thing that people use to change their methods of thinking and everything. But after doing all that, I really noticed how much my people watching, because I'm an author and I just watch everything, take it on, and how much that improved as far as my curiosity about people's motivations and, you know, why they do the things they do. If especially the less sense it makes to me, the more curious I am to wonder and find out, not find out exactly, but just use asking, you know, why did that make sense to that person in that moment? And I mean, there's a story in any of those, even if they're boring and they had a really good reason. During the fursuit parade, I was walking by one of the skywalks, and one side was completely blacked out, and I'm like, that's weird. And so I was going to take a peek, and that guy came up and said, no, it's a headless lounge, and it really was. And my next question was, why aren't there any signs? And the guy goes, I don't know. I guess maybe they hired us for that, and that was the end of it. But now I'm curious. When there could be just somebody forgot, or there could be this completely whole big political thing or a rule, anything, any kind of drama that those little black things on the window could make. And that's the way my brain works, at least.
So, and then we have
That was kind of part of my question.
Oh, okay.
But tangentially to that, since I don't write a lot of slice of life, because I also have a very dull life, what are pitfalls when writing slice of life?
Well, the point that the young lady over here brought up is a very good one. It's like, oh, my life's not that interesting. I get up, I sit on the computer for 8 hours, you know, I basically do nothing. So that's something you'll want to avoid, or you're going to lose a reader really quick. So that's, for me, that's the biggest pitfall, is just keeping the story interesting. And since I have a really overactive imagination and it's always jumping into what-if scenarios, that's not terribly hard for me to do.
Okay, so I question whether things are uninteresting or the way we tell them is uninteresting. So for like a master that's like, Ursula makes everything funny.
Right.
Even
yeah.
stupid little mundane things that she's doing that I'm like, how did you turn that into an anecdote that made 70 people comment that they're rolling off their chairs laughing, when it's something that is basically, I went to my computer and sat down kind of stuff. But the way that she tells it makes it interesting. So I think more than what you tell about, you think about how you're telling it, and how do you want to make people laugh? Do you want to make them think? Do you want to make them cry? Do you want them to make them think of something in their own past that was similar? You know, depending on what you're aiming for with your particular story, how is it that you want to tell this story of this, even this small little thing that happened to get to that point? So I think anything can be interesting if you find the interest in it and show it to people. So, but if you already think it's boring, it's going to fail.
Right. It involves a lot of creative lateral thinking as well. I mean, someone else's boring may be someone else's day of their life. Mm-hmm. It just depends on, I mean, everybody brings their own thing to the table, and everybody's used to their own kind of normal.
Yes.
Well, absolutely. I was a police officer for 6 years, and let me tell you, people have this vision of police officers, good or bad, that is way, way romanticized. It's 98% being bored out of your skull.
Well, and it's like when I became a parent and I started talking about parenting stuff, and I thought it would be boring to everyone except people who had kids of the same age. And I had people like, why did you stop with those stories? We loved them. They were fantastic. We miss them. And I'm like, oh, well, she's old enough to find these stories now on the internet, so I think I should stop telling her. But yeah, to me, that's just like, what is more mundane than, I'm so tired, I'm eating my own kids' teething biscuits. And yet, if you tell it in the right way, people are fantastically entertained by it.
Or you put it on Instagram and it's just, boom, feasting.
Is that boom like head exploding again? Okay.
But yeah, I mean, that's how some people have made money online. Their everyday things fascinate other people, and
Cop life would be very fascinating to know about, even because we don't know what it's like.
I'll have some stories for Dark and Difficult.
Yeah.
So.
Uh-oh.
Nothing too traumatic.
Go ahead.
I had two things to say. One, back to the whole computer thing. It could be even more simpler than that, than saying a doctor called results in saying your checkup. It could be person has to do a assignment, or they're even writing their own book, but the computer malfunctions and they're panicking, kind of thing. And then they do a whole like, adventure trying to get their computer fixed. And to slice of life. What if like you create a world and then that world is that norm, and then you put that character in there? Would that still be slice of life? Say back again to the cartoon thing, like that could be like normal everyday life to them, and if you put like a character in there trying to live a normal life based on that world, would that be considered slice of life?
I guess it depends on how dramatically intense the conflict is. If, you know, the conflict is they get put in that world and then there's this Roger Rabbit-like attempt to destroy that world and they have to stop it, then it's not slice of life. But if it's just like, I don't know how to operate a toaster that's jumping around and making faces at me, then yeah, well, I would think, right?
Actually, that would make for a pretty good slice of life story.
It would be pretty good. Yeah. Write that story.
I've tried 3 times. That's why I'm going to this panel.
What stopped you?
Too many ideas, trying to figure out, but now that I'm like...
Series.
Write all of them.
Epic
Yes.
series.
Also, the main character is always sometimes that's like, how do you get like from let's say in a first person perspective, how do you design the character that you want characters to, I guess in a way, get into an intimate perspective on that? Because that's the thing I've always struggled, especially with that kind of theme. I've always struggled with finding the main character for the story.
Well, the main character is the person that everything happens to, I would think, right?
Or at least happens around.
Or around.
Because one thing I've always worried was make a character that's likable. Because I know that if you have a book and the character's not likable, they're not going to want to read it.
Not
Well,
necessarily.
Relatable more than likable.
Well, I won't read a book about someone who's not likable.
See, she gets me.
Yes, I do.
And I love books about not likable people.
Okay, I made it through Breaking Bad, but it was really hard. But, you know, I would think, do you know the kind of people who annoy you in person? Like, your actual you person? Like, people you can't stand, behaviors you hate, things that annoy you. Just don't give your character those things, right?
Yeah.
Make them like your friends. Like, I'd have coffee with this person. I like them. So, no, you know what makes a character likable because you know what makes people likable. It's not really different, I think, right?
No, that sounds good. Yeah.
Yay! Feasting!
So just kind of based on the way that we're discussing and laying out kind of that localization and less grandiose conflict in slice of life, it feels like something that is more fit for a short story, maybe a novella, but not something for a longer work.
Don't laugh at me, it's only 5 books long. No, I think you can sustain it, but you have to have a plan. I mean, you have to. Sorry. Sorry, it does require planning. It's certainly easier in short lengths, I would think, but I don't ever write short, so I don't know.
And I have never written long, so.
If it's easy for you to write novels, it'll be easier for you to write slice of life novels. If it's easier for you to write short stories, then the short stories will come easier.
Going back to writing to your strength. Yeah, just write what works best for you.
Wow, suddenly.
Uh-oh, didn't see
Okay,
this
over
first.
here.
Was that
Follow up.
first? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, on that thought, wouldn't it just be easier, like, you could do a novel, but it might be done through short stories, like episodic sort of?
You could, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You could write a
Like,
series.
even from multiple characters' perspectives.
Magnolia comes to mind.
Oh, I hate that play. It makes me cry every time.
Play?
Feel Magnolia.
Okay, never mind.
The movie Magnolia.
I've not seen it then.
Okay.
No.
Has anybody seen that movie?
No.
Oh, I feel so outnumbered. Okay. Well, if you want a good example of a large cast of characters whose lives all interact in a very sometimes it's mundane, but sometimes it's pretty dramatic. The movie Magnolia is a good one. It's 3 hours long, but the way that it's all written together is pretty impressive, but it's not a happy ending.
Nice.
So like Cloud Atlas, but
Yes.
less dramatic? Yeah.
Same theme, yeah, or the same structure, yeah.
Cool. All right, we had like a bunch of hands, but
TJ, you had your hand up?
Well, I mean, okay, when it comes to the genre, do you think it is easier to pants or plan? Or does that kind of a moot thing because you are a fill in the blank here?
That's a very good question. Maggie?
okay then. Well, thank you, Bob. It would be totally craven for me to hand that off to you now, right?
I was ready.
Go.
Just restate your question real quick.
Yeah. So when it comes to the genre of slice of life, since that's really what we're talking about, the genre or subgenre that includes slice of life, do you feel it's easier to pants or plan stories like that, or is it just I am this type of writer, so that's what I do, so I don't care what the genre is?
I think that also depends on the writer too. I almost never, well, people will tell you, always plan and don't worry about editing when you go through. I never plan and I always edit as I go because I have a special brain. So it works for me to not plan, or at least I have certain plot points that I want to hit and certain actions and things that I need to drive the story, but all the tweener stuff remains to be tweened. So I fill in the blanks as I go, but sometimes I find the story taking me in a direction it wants to go. Sometimes it's better, but sometimes I have to go back, rein it in, delete a bunch of stuff, just so I can get the idea that I always wanted out and not overshadow it with something new.
I only recently started outlining things, and I don't outline everything. A lot of my slice of life stuff, the one that got published is one of the few slice of life stories I've actually outlined, and I didn't write it in sequence either. I wrote the middle, then the end, then the beginning of that one too. So that was a very unique thing for me. So it worked for that story. So I'm going to say whatever works for whatever you're doing. If you do better with planning and outlining and all of that, to do that. If you're a pantser and that's how you write, then do that. I mean, again, it sounds like broken records, but yeah, write to your strengths, always.
I would say, just as a lagniappe, right? Don't get too attached to your identity as a pantser or an outliner, because
very good point.
Different projects might want different things, or different times in your life you may experiment, discover this works better if you do it this way. And if you're committed to yourself as feeling, I am a pantser and I do everything subconsciously and it's awesome, and it's more awesome than the outlining people who have to sit there and do all their little things or whatever, then suddenly you're like, oh, crisis, who am I now? You know, it's like you don't want to get in a position where you talk yourself out of using tools that might work. So, you know,
I would never pants a novel. Not even I would.
See, I pants novels all the time.
See? Everybody can do it.
But I don't think of myself as a pantser, because I've also done outlines, and I find I need them for different things. They're different things depending on where I am and what I'm doing. So, you know, whatever, be willing to experiment, and come back to experiments that you think you have, you know, already decided on, and see if things have changed. And you might find something useful that way.
Okay, we had John, and we'll get to you.
All right, so this is a bit technical and nitty gritty, but one thing that I have been having a bit of difficulty with recently is I've been sort of wanting to write the slice of life that I do in more of a past perfect tense, and that gets really awkward since past perfect is defined by the use of had and hadn't, and it gets repetitive. So like I've been trying to switch between past and past perfect, and that seemed to go well for some readers, but then I had one person say, hey, this doesn't make sense. Why are you switching between past and past perfect? And I wanted to know if like there were any, how you guys handled it without either becoming repetitive, or if you switched or between those, and what kind of ways you dealt with that issue.
Okay, so I want to ask, what made you decide you had to write in that specific tense?
I'm not sure. I think that the story worked. It's a very like hard-hitting, dark story, very personal to the character. So I wanted to give it sort of that memoir-y, telly feel. I like writing things as if they're spoken. So that sort of led me to start writing it in more of a like that memoir-y, past perfect tense.
Okay.
Gone like that.
I don't know, what do you guys think?
It is a challenge, and I do find it difficult, even when I'm writing a story that's primarily in past tense, where I have to go into the past perfect. I tend not to use the had forever once I've introduced it, only when I feel that it's like I will start a character with an accent out pretty heavily, and then I'll back it off a little bit once I think that the voice is in the reader's head. So once I have the establishment that this has happened in the past, but then there's more past things, I rely on the reader to take up some of the slack. But then once I have a new concept that I have to go into past perfect, it has to start all over again. But it also it helps for editing later on, as so not to confuse myself, because I've done that before too.
I have trouble keeping my tenses straight, so I'll defer to the people with greater experience.
I guess I got into the habit, one of the times I sold a story to Strange Horizons and the editor went through it, you know, they said just use had or have once or twice and then just let it drift off, and then renew that once in a while when you feel like it needs to be you need to remind people of it. But they were super adamant about not hitting that over and over and over again. And I don't know if I guess that's a style thing that editor had or whatever, but it kind of stuck in my head, and now I sort of do it. So
actually, I like that.
It kind of works out if you say it in your head like you would be telling it to somebody. It's like, last week I had gone to supermarket. I forget, I'm from California, to get some things, and I had wanted these oranges, but all they had were bananas, and so then it slips directly into
past tense.
It's kind of past tense under the aegis of
Does that help? That was a rough question.
It helps. Well, it's more of a worry, because I had sort of started in past perfect, and then I naturally drifted into past, and then the person was like, wait a second, you're in past perfect, and you need to do this. And so they had a different style, I guess.
Well, it's like he said, this is natural. You drifted into it because that's what we all do when we speak. So I don't think that's a wrong choice.
Especially, are you writing in first person?
Yes, it's first person.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's even better.
Cool. Go ahead.
Just for quick clarification, a pantser is by the seat of their pants?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Pantser does not plan their stories. They'll have an idea, but they'll just sit down and write the idea. And the outliners are the people who make the outlines. Like, I want to go this character to do this point, then this point, this point, and they make a detailed outline.
Well, and I will stubbornly say, pantsing is the process of doing that versus outlining. And seriously, don't and I'm really beating on this because I used to really think of myself as one way until I discovered that I really needed the techniques and the things I had to learn from the other side. And for a moment it was like, but I can't do that because that's not who I am. No, it's not who I am. I'm a writer. I'm going to use the tool that works. But I mean, it got to the point where, okay, well, this really worked for this, and now at this point in this complexity, it doesn't work. And yet I can go back and forth, and that's okay. So, don't.
Something that the Furry Writers Guild has really taught me is it's a group of a bunch of really fantastic authors and some who are okay like me, and there are all there are all these different techniques. We have these things called coffee house chats on Tuesdays and Thursdays where we get together, and sometimes we'll have like defined topics, and pantsing and outlining and things like that have come up as topics before, and the authors in there, and you'll see people like Kyle Gold, Maggie Hogarth here, in actually giving you advice. And I've tried several different techniques, and I'm kind of coming to like an amalgam. Like, I'm no longer just a pantser. Now I'm kind of like an in-between. I'll outline stuff and then just basically pants between the points in the outline.
Yeah, that's cool. The Furry Writers Guild is awesome. I highly recommend it to people who want to hang out with other furry writers. They're very nice. They let me in.
They'd let you run it if
No, I don't want to run it. Go ahead.
Does anyone have any recommendations for specific furry slice of life works? Because I have a couple.
Were you pointing at me? Should I be like, okay. Furry slice of life. You know, I kind of think a lot of Kyle's work is slice of life.
Kyle Gold, yeah.
Because it's sort of new adulty, and new adult work is also slice of lifey. It's, you know, I'm trying to come to terms with who I am and what I'm going to do with my life. And
You mean Waterways?
Waterways was good. What else? Who else does slice of
His
life?
novella Bridges was pretty slice of life.
Hmm?
His novella Bridges was pretty slice of life.
He does really good slice of life. Well, he does really good everything. But who else does slice of life?
Slipwolf has written some slice of life stuff that I really enjoy. Candrel, yes.
He does slice of life with tinges of technology in it that is so normalized in its own story that you're automatically comfortable. That it doesn't even, the suspension of disbelief doesn't get in the way of the rest of the story.
I don't know. I'm running out of ideas because I'm
I
tired.
feel personally, at least when it comes to a certain various anthologies, even though they may have theme, but something like Roar, the stories I've read in there, a lot of them, even though they're generally themed towards something, the scenes are very slice of life. And if you're into more erotic works, I could say sometimes it is similar with Fang as well. Not always, because I haven't read them all. I can't probably say that, but
It's kind of a mixed bag. More of a mixed bag with Fang than it is with Roar, I think. But no, that is a good point about Roar. There are quite a few good slice of life short stories in Roar.
Was there someone over here I thought I saw? No. Okay, go ahead.
One thing I struggle with is grammar. So is there like, I know slice of life, you can kind of be a little more lenient because like based on certain ways people talk, like whether they have accents or they grow up in like certain different areas, like say someone from the South, they're gonna probably have more grammar problems, I guess you could say.
Oh my God, I grew up in the South.
I know, but my point is like, I have bad grammar to begin with, so like I always feel like I'm gonna struggle more writing it out. So I don't know. I guess I was asking who you recommend for people that edit grammars, or editor, I guess.
Well, we have copy editors. Who copy editors? We're sitting next to
Fugue.
And
Fugue's going to be too busy doing his Sofa Wolf stuff and his own writing to Sean River Critic with Anthroquatic.
Yeah.
He's a professional editor. You have to pay for him.
But he'll teach you stuff.
He will teach you stuff. Yeah. Last thing, I had a novella edited by Sean, and it cost me $400. He is a professional editor. So.
But if you take that edit and you really take time with it, then you'll learn things from it that will make your next edit, much cheaper. So that's worth having.
As far as other professional editors go, well, there's quite a few editors. I'm going to plug the Furry Writers Guild again because there's a huge collection of editors, authors, and publishers in the guild. And you can talk to Ocean Tigrox. Nine Eyes and Slipwolf are editing a dystopia right now. Kiri's going to be editing the new Claw. So just tons of editors. Thurston Howell is in there. He's Thurston Howell Publishing. He's got a cadre of editors. So, yeah, Furry Writers Guild, and they can help you with all this stuff.
That's true.
Yes.
I think I heard her say something about accents. Like, what should we do if our character has an accent? Should we do something with the way it's spelled, or should we just keep it the same way?
I mentioned before that characters who have an accent, especially if maybe it's a brogue or something like that, I tend to set up the voice in the reader's mind and probably go through, I don't know how much dialogue, but a few pages of just normal writing. And once I feel that the way that they speak or their cadence has been picked up by the reader, then I kind of pull it back a little bit with just a few reminders. I mean, there's apostrophes and onomatopoeic spelling, but then I might just maybe reduce it by 2/3 or so, just to keep the character speaking in the reader's head without having to redo it.
Sure. So there's several schools of thought on this. Some people will say absolutely never do it, and others say do it throughout the entire story. I'm more of a mind of being consistent. If you do the consistency thing, White is actually a very good writer, and the fact that he can do that, start with an accent and then back it off, and you still have that cadence of the character's voice in your head, is something that most people can't do. So I would say whatever you do, be consistent. Either write it in normal dialogue, and then accent it with like a dialogue tag. He said in a thick drawl or something like that, or consistently write the accent all the way through. And I wouldn't recommend trying to pull off what White's doing until you really get a feel for your own style and voice and how best you're going to write dialogue.
Okay. I will keep my linguistics hat in the closet because I could probably talk for 20 minutes about that. What I would suggest, and what I don't see a lot of people doing, which is kind of disappointing to me because I love voices, is instead of saying, to writing it out, you could write it out, you could use dialogue tags, is talk about how other people react to it. Like when you hear, okay, is this accent strange to them, or are they used to it because there's lots of people around who have it and they're used to deciphering it? Is it really heavy and difficult for them? Does it annoy them because they can't figure it out? Is it exotic to them and then they find it attractive? Does it make everything that character says kind of distracting because they're busy going, oh, could you read the phone book to me? We don't have, instead of, so-and-so said, and I almost couldn't make out that last word because he said it so thickly and I just didn't understand it at all. You can talk about how other people perceive it, and then that gives the reader a clue about how it's supposed to be said without having to be a master of figuring out, how dialects work and how language works and sentence structure in different languages, and I'm not going to go there. I'm stopping right now. But yeah, people react to accents, and that can tell us a lot about them as characters and about their culture and setting. Like I would not even blink an eye at a Hispanic accent, but I'd be super shocked to hear Chinese accents in my town because there's not a lot of Chinese people there. So, and then that also tells you about me. I grew up that way, so you can use so much with language, different languages, that it's a pity that I don't see more of it because I love it. So try that and then show it to me so that I can be excited. Okay, what else? Total silence. Shocking.
All right, I guess we covered it all.
Sting!
I'm busy reading my book on linguistics.
What?
I'm busy reading my book on linguistics.
What is it?
Mother tongue and now got English and I got that way Bill Bryson.
Oh, awesome. Yes.
1990, but still good.
One thing I'm struggling with trying to start a slice of life story is like, how do you find that starting point, like the event that triggers everything that follows to make it into a consistent, long, ongoing story?
Where do you start a story is basically what you're asking, I guess.
I think he's more asking about the inciting incident.
Well, the point of slice of life is that the inciting incidents are pretty minor, so you could pretty much choose any of them,
True.
right? I don't know. Where would you start your slice of life?
I start from everywhere. I write stories based on a single word sometimes just because they pique my interest. It really depends. That is where the outlining comes in handy because you have this idea and then you look for the stuff that happened before this or after this, and eventually you'll get to a point where you'll find out what is the best place to start it, if you want to start at the beginning of a day, or if you want to start in the middle of the thing that's happening, or maybe their reaction to or what happened after. So that's kind of what serves the story best, and sometimes that's just plain old trying.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Try writing it from different starting points. You know, try writing it from getting up in the morning. Try writing it, okay, that something just happened. You know, like you're writing it in media res. You know, try different ways to do it and see which one works best. It's never going to hurt you to write too much. You can always edit out once you've got what you know works.
Are there any slice of life writing exercises you could recommend?
Yes. People watch. I mean, it's not a writing exercise, but watch people.
Go do that now. Walk out the pen.
What about if you're watching people and making up their stories?
Yes. Well, I mean, that's to me, that's people watch. Forgive me for not clarifying. But yeah, when I people watch, I look at somebody and I try to determine. It's like, okay, what are they doing? Where are they going? Where did they come from? And like I said, I was a police officer. I did that a lot as a police officer too. You know, criminal investigation and such. It's a lot of deductive reasoning, really. So I do that. As for actually physically writing things down, I did something that I found very entertaining. It was the story that I wrote in second person. I threw up an idea on my SoFurry, and I basically said, okay, I want my readers to pick this story. So I started with an opening, and then I gave 3 options, and they voted on what they wanted to happen next. And as that went on, it was just, you know, like 5 or 10 different votes into it. I wasn't doing any suggestions at all. They were all reader suggestions that were voted on. So I would have that little bitty comment, little bitty blurbs, like, okay, I want to see the character do this, this, and this next. And I would write somewhere between 300 and 500 words each day based on whatever comment won, got the most upvotes. So that was really good for me, you know.
I would fail at the people watching because I'd be too busy going, what if they're like a secret agent? Or, oh, they could actually be a shape-shifted alien and they're here for doing anthropology exercises. That would be really cool.
That's not really a failure, though. That's just a much more exotic
it's
slice of
just
life.
not, it wouldn't inspire a slice of life. Well, actually, you know, the alien doing anthropology experiments among humans would actually be kind of an interesting slice of life.
It'd be great. Quit selling yourself short. You get on his case about it.
Well, yeah, that's true. So I don't know. I would my first response to how do I learn better how to do this is to go read lots of examples. So for me, that is always the starting point of any. I'd like to do this better is to go find people who do it well and say, what do they have in common? How they do it differently? What do I think I would do well that's similar? All that stuff. And, you know, we have some great slice of life people in the fandom. So even within furry, we have people that we can learn from. So that would be my suggestion. What about you?
There's a story written by Ray Bradbury called There Will Come Soft Rains.
Oh my God.
Love that story.
It's one of my favorite stories.
It is hard.
It's an incredibly harsh story, but as you guys were talking, I was like, yeah, it's a slice of life. It's
Yeah,
a
it is
really
a slice of life.
bad slice of, really, yeah,
It's,
a very sad slice
Okay,
of
do you
life.
want to tell them what it's about?
Sure. Back in the atomic age and everything, the story starts out. God, it's really hard to describe how it's written. There's not a single living thing in the story. Am I correct, or was
Right,
it?
yeah,
Okay.
no living things at all.
And so this house is in the future, and so everything's automated, and so the toaster makes automatic toast that never gets eaten, and I don't know, the vacuum robot comes out, and there's just the house goes on without the people, and so you eventually should I
Yes.
go through the okay
Yes.
at the towards the end of the story. let's see.
The house catches
What
on
the
fire.
house catches on fire by some reason. I forgot what it
The
was.
tree falls over.
Okay. And then the house is trying to put out the fire, but there's a scene where you see on a wall of the house is a bunch of human shadows.
Children playing ball in
Yep,
the yard.
frozen on the side of the house where the paint was vaporized, and there, that was your slice of life. It really hits at the very end because you want something to happen, but not that, and,
Right.
and that's it.
You might call those
Well, and so here's the, okay, you want to, so that's basically a story where you realize that, you know, this day happened without these people because they died in a nuclear holocaust. My college, my university, the chemistry department, one of their buildings has, an artist did a sculpture rendition, flat relief on one of the walls of the people, the children playing from that story.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, wait.
That's not haunting at all.
No, well, they wanted to have a reminder of the power of science and what you're doing, right? You know, walk in here and be responsible. But that was like, wow. Okay.
Too much responsibility.
Yeah, too much responsibility.
And
but Ray Bradbury was brilliant. Oh my God.
yeah, and
He never wrote a bad word. Never. He was amazing.
it would be tough for me to find a bad word.
Yeah. Yeah. Read all of Ray Bradbury.
And then curl up in a corner and cry.
Well,
Yeah.
well, read it in chunks, you know, and then read stuff that's less poignant in between. So yeah, so you were saying about the story. How does that translate to an exercise?
It was still a good point.
Okay. Okay.
There was something in the question that reminded me of it, though.
Well, I was talking about read other good slices, right?
That was probably it.
Okay.
Yeah, another good example, if you know, there's a Cloud Atlas and Magnolia. If you want to read a good example, especially in the short format, that one will go.
Yeah. Try. I would, as an exercise, I would try writing something that happened to you in your week, as if you were telling it to somebody in a way that you wanted to entertain them, you know, like over coffee or whatever, and see how you would choose to tell a friend about the stuff that happens to you. And then that, I think, gives you a clue about how to go about it, I would think.
And don't assume everyone else will think the boring things in your life are boring.
No.
Because the things that I tell people that I think are boring are the exact opposite. No matter how yeah. But that's part of, you know, a little bit of imposter syndrome going on too. But
You are awesome. You are also awesome.
feasting is awesome.
That is always awesome.
I got a crazy idea. For look up stock photos. There's stock photos for just about everything. Just make a story explaining how they got there, what's happening.
That would be cool. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah,
Go
I've seen stories
you!
told, yeah, I've seen stories told entirely with stock photography before. So.
That's awesome.
And usually they're pretty absurd, but I like them. So.
I just had I don't know if this applies, but I'm just going to get it out there. It reminded me of a Corbis stock photo of a drop of water on a leaf, or like a leaf of grass. And I'm like, okay, well, a day in the life of these little tiny creatures in the lawn who, you know, like once a week the god of blades or something comes by and they have to batten down the hatches. It's normal to them, but I mean, that is a possible slice of life, but it's also fantasy.
That's cool. You should write that one too. I'd read it.
I'm going to remind myself.
You had a question.
Oh, it was just, I lost it. I lost the thought. His idea was better.
All right. More questions. Happy questions. Hard questions.
I have a random question. It's not
Go.
really, but it's related to writing.
Go.
How do you decide on pen names and if you want to have different ones for different genres and stuff?
Oh.
And especially like in fandom, because I feel like, I don't know if it's as a problem in the fandom that people judge books on the pen names as they do in like fantasy and how they're set up.
All right. Who do you write as?
I have two pen names. I write as Bog Moogle in the furry fandom. I have a mainstream pen name. I don't mix the two at all, so I'm not going to reveal the mainstream pen name.
I think that gets to the gist of it. what do you want to have a reputation as?
Right.
For, and who do you want to have it with?
Exactly. So yeah, my furry is my furry, and my mainstream is my mainstream, and they don't cross over. How I picked them, my mainstream pen name was a joke nickname that a friend of mine wrote on my name tag when I was a bag boy at a Dillon's supermarket back in Springfield, Missouri. So it was just to play off that. And Mog, of course, I like Final Fantasy, and my gaming handle's been Mog Moogle since 1996. So when I found this furry fandom stuff, I was like, well, what species would I be? Duh.
A chocobo.
Slice of life of a chocobo.
No, that would be awesome. You should write that too. Okay, well, pet names.
And then I saved his game.
I will not save your game. I will not deliver your mail.
Will you hold the chalice?
Do you want to hold a chalice? It doesn't have to be a chalice. Okay, fine.
I only write under my one name because I sealed my fate years ago. With that being said, I'm very impressed with the breadth of things that I am able to write and still get the publications that I do. It speaks to a lot to the acceptance of things in the fandom. I do have another pen name, but I won't reveal that because there's 2 stories on So Furry that are horrible, but I love getting comments on them. One's from 1995. But I only...
What sort of horrible?
It's horribly written.
Okay, you mean badly written?
Yeah. Well, that and it just keeps going
Horrible
on and
can
on.
be many things.
Yeah, it's cringeworthy. But I only write under the one name because that's what I'm known as, and changing it now probably would lead to more problems than not. So.
All right, so you have asked a branding question. Yeah, I already did that panel yesterday. Okay. You have to decide what kind of career you want. Once you have decided what kind of career you want, then you have to look into the conventions for that particular career and the expectations. I mean, when I say this, I'm making an assumption that you want to have like a career with lots of people, and not everybody does. So, just keep that in mind. And then given that, once you decide what you want to do with your career, then you can make choices based on, okay, I'd like to stay writing furry, or I'd like to write furry and something else, or I'd like to write erotica and something else. Or you have to know all those things before you decide, how do I want to differentiate myself so that people in this pot and people in this pot, I can figure out if there's a middle point where they intersect or they don't ever intersect. So before you can even choose, you have to know what you want to accomplish. Unfortunately, I have 2 pen names. I don't fear to reveal them. I write because they're serving a specific purpose, but I don't care if people know that I'm the same person. I have one that I write children's books under, which is my name, Maggie Hogarth, and I write adult books under my initials, M.c.a. Hogarth. So you know that I'm doing both, but the point is, people who are only shopping for children's books are going to know that name, and they're not necessarily going to go looking for something else, and they're not going to find this unless they seek it, which is good because I don't want them getting confused when they're buying a children's book about laundry dragons, and then they're like, oh, she also writes about these dragons, let's get these. No. Okay. No. So that's my way of informing people. This is a brand where you get only these things, and this is a brand where you get only this stuff. So if you're shopping for one of these particular things, stay in these buckets. And so that's the purpose of it. But I don't need to separate me. Like, I don't need to hide my identity and some people, they work in jobs that are sensitive and they can't reveal those things, so they have like a different imperative, right?
Oh, absolutely. I kept furry completely under wraps when I was a police officer, because if they ever got on my So Furry, I wouldn't have had a job.
Yeah, so you have to know what you want to accomplish with your career, what you want to write, and who your target audience is. And once you know all those things, then you can make choices. But unfortunately, we often start writing before we think about those things.
True.
So,
Hello.
but so I encourage you to think about them now, before you start getting into it, so that you can make those decisions. And I think the best way to go about that is you can find a lot of branding information on different writers' blogs. Christine Catherine Rush is writing a series right now on her business blog about branding for writers, which takes on pen names, and it's pretty excellent. So I would encourage people to look that up. It's RUSCH Rush. Business Rush will take you to it if you search on Google. So she does good stuff. Wait, time. We have 10 minutes. 10 minutes before feasting with the Pocky.
It was kind of fortunate that we had all three approaches up at the same table. So we got the one name, doesn't care or can't care, completely separate. Two names,
Don't care.
out in the public. So yeah, and we all have our reasons, and all of them work as far as I know.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk to us about your favorite slice of life piece that you've written?
Go for it. I want to hear it.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, my favorite is Transitions and Fragments of Life's Heart, because that's the one that's published.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Where do you find this?
Well, okay, but thumbnail blurbs so you can excite people into finding out about it.
Absolutely. By Fragments of Life's Heart. It's a good book. It's a good anthology.
Tell us your story.
Don't tell everything. Just blurb.
Blurb us
Right.
your
There.
story.
Trailer.
Trailer.
Yeah.
Don't Michael Bay it.
Sunday.
Boom.
No,
So
not too long. Bad you. Very bad you. Okay, go
You have
ahead.
no idea.
Yes, I don't, but I'm guessing.
okay, it's not 10 o'clock yet, so let's move on.
Right.
Transitions is about a male to female character that's transitioning male to female, and they have to juggle their identities while they're keeping the other identity a secret from certain people. So Freya, who is the female that's being transitioned into, her biological sex became almost an alter ego, Jeffrey. And so Jeffrey actually has to dress down and wear a disguise to portray himself as male because Freya's quite a ways in this transition. She's about to go off to college, and she wants to tell her dad that she's transitioning before she leaves. And at the same time, her boyfriend is also joining the military. So it's about all of the different transitions in her life at that point.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
It sounds sad. I'm scared at the same time.
No, but it's so elegant. Like, what a nice thematic thing you have going on there.
Yeah, it doesn't have an unhappy ending. It has an open ending, but not an unhappy one.
Excellent.
Nobody dies.
He didn't promise that.
Go.
I'm still thinking of the story.
You're still thinking of one.
I have a lot
How many
to
have
go
you
through.
written?
133.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Life goals.
How long have you been writing?
If you count those other two stories, since I was 14, 1995.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, about 22 years.
22 years or 32 years?
22.
Okay. I can't math.
It's
Sorry.
about 66 stories a year.
I had a story too.
6.
Come on, it's right there.
Do I need to give you Pocky?
Okay. Oh, it's right there.
Feasting.
No feasting.
No.
Sorrow.
Okay.
Grieving.
Oh.
No.
Okay, well, let's talk about another Heat story since that one's published. It's called 6 minutes? 2 minutes. I forgot. There's so many stories. It's about a donkey. And the story is set in 1937, I believe. And it is a literal slice of life because it's about the Kentucky Derby, which is, I think it's the most exciting 2 minutes of the year or something. That's what it used to be called.
Best exciting 2 minutes in sports.
Sport, thank you, yes.
Nice.
I'm from Baltimore, home of the Preakness. So.
There we go, cool. That came in handy. And so it was just this family of donkeys, because donkeys don't run. It's the horses that run in the derbies, but this one donkey is the fish out of water. But he's the reason that the story exists, but he never appears in the story because they're listening over a radio broadcast. And at the end of the story, the donkey's little brother, who is going off to college in a year, has a rendezvous with the family cook, who is an alligator from Florida. And without going into the details, it's just it would seem pretty boring and normal to the people in the family who are gathered around and everything. But this one character has such an interesting inner life that he brings a lot to the story. Is not about the event, the Kentucky Derby. It's just about the him going. This is why I had the other idea. But yeah, it's a day in his life. But his other older brother has shell shock from World War I, and these other things that are just every character is their own little thing, and his mom and dad, and they're all gathered on the radio, and they all have their own little eccentricities about them, and so that informs this one character's life as well as his relationship with the alligator and the alligator's relationship with the other brother. But I have to stop there as an example.
That's really cool.
Which heat is it in?
Yes.
Was that
4 more minutes left.
13? Was it 12 or 13?
I think it was 12.
12?
Yeah.
2 minutes. Just
Yeah.
remember the title. All right, so this would be mine. This is the only slice of life I've written, but it's 5 books long. Well, 4 books until 5 comes out. And I would call it a slice of life, asexual romance between 2 college students who happen to be a space elf and a telepathic centaur. So that would be mine. It sounds ridiculous, I admit.
Sounds awesome.
But it is actually one of my best-selling series. So who knew? I didn't when I started writing it. Go ahead.
For back to the pen name thing, how he might what if you had a story that fit an everyday, could go in a normal bookstore, and then but could also go into the furry community. Would you at that point have the same book with 2 different pen names, or would it have the same one, or?
Okay.
I'll
take this because I recently did this. My submission for Roar this year, which was rejected. I'm not in Roar, unfortunately. Followed a mouse who was a squirrel who was in middle school, and she's dealing with an anxiety disorder, and she escapes into her artwork. She likes to draw, so she escapes into that to get away from everybody. And the story was a little too rough to be accepted by Roar, so it was a fair rejection letter. But then I revised it for my writing group, and what I did was I changed all of the species back to human, changed all the pronouns back to human pronouns, and it was actually really it was a fun experience to do. But that was on my mainstream pen name, while the furry version is on my furry pen name. And I suppose if they were ever both published, which I probably wouldn't do, I'd probably just try to get one or the other published. If they were ever both published, you could tie them together and figure out who's who. But the story itself is the same, but the characters are so different, and they would be in such different areas, you know, in the market, that I don't think that'd be tied together, because frankly, I'm just not famous enough for people to go out and try to figure out who does what to who. Yeah.
Most of that dedicated fans.
That's like a 15-minute question. We have like 3 minutes. You have to know what you want more. Like, what's your career priority? There are career priorities that you cannot achieve in furry fandom. Making a living, for example. You need a broader audience to float a career that makes you enough money to make a living. So if your goals are not consonant with staying within furry, then privileging anything that is furry specific is it's contradictory to what you're trying to accomplish. If you have goals that are consonant with furry fandom, you like the community, you want to stick with the community, you get things out of it that you can't get out of by being a small pond and a small fish in a huge pond, then absolutely you should be privileging the furry interpretation of things over a more mainstream thing. So until you've decided what your priorities are and what you want to do with your career, it's kind of hard to answer that question for yourself, I would think. So that's what I would say. I think we are at 6. So maybe we take a quick last question or something, or we just say thank you, depending.
No, I didn't have an answer to that question, since the publishing thing isn't, it's not my top priority. But
Anybody else before we wrap up? We love you. No, we love you too. Yes, Pocky. If you all want Pocky, have Pocky. But come up and get business cards from these awesome people and talk to them and stuff.
Yep.
Thank you all.